Hello everyone, my name is Corey with Good Evening Tech, and we're going to go over a short and simple tutorial over JavaScript looping. So, JavaScript looping is just how we can go over arrays or lists of items to, cut down on the work and make sure we can do everything correctly. So the biggest thing about making a list is, you have a huge list of data and you want everything to look exactly the same. Instead of typing it out for every single item, you can use looping to do everything for you. So, first thing we're going to take a loop at here, I'm going to fix this up. I'm using Visual Studio Code with Live Server. Great IDE with a great little add-on that you have there, and on the right-hand side is my Safari that shows exactly what we're doing. So the first thing I've written out there is a little script tag to make sure that JavaScript is working, and it just prints hello world. So the first thing we're going to do for looping is we're going to create an array. So an array is just a group of objects that are together, and you can think of it like a list or just a collection of stuff. So name a variable, we'll call it people, and in this list we will have Corey, Dave, Cedric, and Tony. So whenever you're declaring an array, in JavaScript an array can be numbers, strings, pretty much any kind of data type you can think of, and it can be mixed together. But to make an array, when you declare the variable, you put it in those square brackets and it makes the array. I drop it down on lines like that just so it's easier for me to read. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to use document write. We're going to make a unordered list. Then I'm going to end it right down here. So what we're going to do inside here is create a list object using a for loop. So how a for loop works is you have the for keyword. Now what we're going to do in here is declare I, the variable. Now this variable here can be named whatever you want it to be. It's just going to be used inside the for loop, and then it goes away once the for loop's done. What I'm going to do here is type out a couple things and I'll go over what's happening. So how a for loop works is you create a variable for it to go off of. The middle thing after the semicolon there is the condition that for loop uses. So as long as I is less than people.length, just like document.write, objects in JavaScript have special little methods with them. Definitely look at documentation through MDN or just use tools through practice with Visual Studio's auto completion. A lot of things in JavaScript are named what you think they are. So an array, the length is the length of the list. And what happens after that is the condition that will happen if the for loop can keep going. So I++ is just a short way to write I plus 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to drop into curly braces. Inside these curly braces is what's actually going to happen inside that for loop. So I'm going to do another document.write. And in here we're going to use a special thing. These are called backticks. If you look on your keyboard, they're to the left of the 1 if you're using a QWERTY keyboard. And what these allow us to do is a special syntax in JavaScript so we don't have to break out of it to put a variable in there. So I'm going to create a list item. And inside here, it's going to be a $, curly brackets. If you're using an IDE that understands JavaScript, you will see it changes a color. What I'm going to do here is do people, then square brackets with that I. So let's run it. And you see over here, it created a list. So what happened is with arrays, when you do square brackets after the array, it's called an index. So the index array start at 0 and then they count up. So when this first starts, I is 0, so people 0, which is Corey. I is less than people length is 1, 2, 3, 4, so I++, then it goes back through, people 1, which is Dave, and so on and so forth. the array variable will always be the length of an array will always be 1 over the actual amount of what an array is, because the length starts at 1, but arrays start at 0. So if that sounded confusing at all, just understand that when you do this kind of for loop, just use a less than sign instead of a less than and equal. It's like this, the array length is 4, but this array goes 0, 1, 2, 3. As you can see over here, it posted those 4. So if we wanted to add some style to these list elements, it would be able to do that, and it would do it for all of them. So if we needed to make a change, it would only have to change in one place. Now another type of looping we're going to go over is called a while loop. So I'm going to type some stuff out, and then we'll go over what's happening. All right, so how this loop works is we set a variable at the top called running true, which is a Boolean, so it's either true or false. And then I created a variable called let count equals 0. So what we're going to put in here is a document write. All right, so I'm going to put that in. If it'll work. Well, while it's trying to work, we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening with it. So, I know why I messed up. So we're going to go down here, or we'll go up here, do count plus plus. So this is something that can happen to you when you try to run a while loop. I think it crashed on me. We're going to rerun it right here. Oh, I think I broke it. But we're going to talk about exactly what's happening right here. So a while loop will use a condition right here, which let running. So as long as running is true, it'll run this code forever. What I did after here is add a plus plus, so that count will always go up with this loop. So if count equals 10, this loop will stop. It seems to be having some trouble here. Let me close out of that. It's probably not a big fan of trying to run that for loop or that while loop. There we go. So I'm going to bring it back over here. We'll refresh it. So understand that when you mess with loops, if the loop is infinite, your computer probably won't like it. In languages like JavaScript, it's not that big of a deal. The browser will usually stop it from going to the point of it crashing, but if you use a language like C or Java, there's a chance that it could crash your computer, which it's not going to destroy it, but it may cause some weird stuff. But JavaScript's pretty safe in this. It may just slow down your computer until you stop it. But you might ask, why would I use a for loop as opposed to a while loop? The main thing in my journey of learning programming, I've seen while loops used for game loops, so it'll run the code indefinitely until something specific happens. Kind of hard to show in an example like this because it's just not enough to build to show exactly, this exact condition's met. But for loops are a lot better for iteration, so you don't always know the length of the list. Yeah, we typed out the people list, but if it comes from a server, it could be 4 people, it could be 30 people. But how that for loop is set up is that list, as long as it's 1 person or more, it'll work perfectly fine. The while loop, if, like I said, you want to run something constantly that monitors or has some kind of thing that's watching other code, that's when a while loop would be great. And if it meets a certain condition, it'll exit out of it. Just think about a video game is always running until you hit the escape key or you press the button on the PlayStation controller and exit out of the game. So I hope this helps you. And if you like these videos, please subscribe and stay tuned for others. Thank you.